Good afternoon, all. We had just a wonderful example of bridging the gap between health economists and decision makers, and it was basically focused on the evidence gathering and using information. And that's one of the inputs of the production function of policy advising. If you allow me some of the economics jargon, let me talk about another input, which is our personal input as economists, or health economists in this process. So I'm going to give you a kind of guidance through my personal view about this, how to bridge this gap, based on my own experience. So there will be no data, so no numbers. I will not talk about costs. I think all the others will talk about costs. So I'll just give you the, as we agreed with Liz, the small details behind the scenes that sometimes go on these issues. And try to convey the idea that information is important, methodology is important, but the people that are involved in the process are important as well, and that the process will matter a lot on these issues. So, but basically when you look on this issue of bridging the gap, it seems like, why don't we see it done? Everyone agrees that we should bridge this gap. So why don't we cross the bridge? Well, if you start thinking a bit about this, you'll see one simple thing. Health economists want decision makers to do what they prescribe. That was the gist of Andrew's talk, right? We want them to follow our prescriptions. There is hardly any paper on health economics nowadays that does not end with policy implications at the end. We want decision makers to do something. But then when you look on decision makers, especially policy makers coming from the political scene, you see that most of the time they want confirmation of what they already decided from the work of health economists. Which makes this bridge a quite starting bridge. It's like you're crossing two bridges, right? Both start in a different way. So the question is how to make this thing move in a more smooth way. And so my focus here will be on how the precision matters, how the process matters a lot, and what can we do to help that process as health economists. So that will be my main issue here today. So let me start. Oh, by the way, the title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I'm going to give you a little bit of each of them through my own experience, okay? Okay, so what are the good things? Well, one important point that Pierre has already mentioned is it takes time. It takes time for research to get into policy circles. And actually, sometimes some of the things may never get into any policy issue. Well, here's just one example of my own life where many years ago, when I was a young researcher, I decided to do something that I found interesting. I was talking about payment systems. And it was about cream skimming, incentives for efficiency in the payment system. This sort of titles that you see always in the papers. At the time, did I expect any impact on policy? Nah. I just wanted to get the paper done, but get it published, get to my tenor decision, and get it counted there. That was basically my point, right? Well, 10 years after I published this thing, here, I received one day a strange message from a country in South America saying, look, we are trying to implement what we have written in that paper. We are having some problems in understanding the formulas. Would you mind clarifying it for us? I have two possibilities, right? Say, it's not me, it's not my fault, right? Or I could try to help out through the process. I decided to try to help out, and we discussed a bit what was inside the formulas, how could they calculate it with the data sets that they have, what other information they needed to do it. And in the end, I think they started using it with some adaptations. It was not, the data they had was not matching exactly what I was putting here. No surprise about that. And it was a curious process. But it was just probably many of the other scholars here in this room have this experience that your research has an impact, sometimes many years afterward, in unexpected ways. Does not mean it is not valuable, just we don't know where it comes from. Am I still scary? One of these days I will have one of these guys after me saying, it went wrong, it's your fault. But until it happens, I'm happy with it. So it was good for me, seeing someone is using these things. The more amazing thing is that I started this work and I had an illustration with Portuguese data, and they never cared about it. So it was at least fun to see someone else. Now let's go for the bad part, okay? I had a request, well, not only me, but the Commission was requested in 2006 to write a policy paper on the financial sustainability of the Portuguese NHS. So they gather health economists, political scientists, medical doctors, representatives of 3 different ministries, create a large commission and said, we want in 6 months an answer of how to make the National Health Service sustainable, financially sustainable. Okay, again, scaring thing, very easy to get it wrong, and very difficult to move along on this process. Now, the curious thing is that the report, while we were writing the report, actually the political decision maker that asked us to do it was basically using the report not on the results, but on saying, keep saying, every time it was on public appearance, saying, look, there is a commission looking on a financial sustainability, so if you don't cut your costs, the commission will do it for you. And if you do it, it's easier. If they come in and do it, it's going to be more terrible for you. And so basically that was, we were using as a commitment process of the government to try to get lower budgets in hospitals. And at some point it seemed to us that they couldn't really care less about what we were doing, as long as that they could say there is someone looking on this issue. Okay? Whether it was credible or not, I don't know, but it seemed to exert some of the point there. The document was delivered on January 2007, so kind of 6 months afterwards, with analysis, with some econometrics, with some reviews of the literature, some recommendations. We try to be succinct recommendations, less than 10 as usually. They don't want to have too much things, and put it there. What happened there, we delivered to the Minister of Health, which just sent it to the Prime Minister's office, where it disappeared. Nobody knew where it was what was done. Okay? And so we had to be quiet and calm about this, and say, we could not go open and say what were the recommendations, because they were on the report under confidentiality, and we could not discuss the document openly. So they basically disappear for several months. So what happens there? What the ugly part appears. What was the ugly part in this process? So that you have the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Now you see the things. The ugly part, it was actually one of the members of the commission, which is a diverse one, that was actually not agreeing with the discussions. So after third or fourth meeting, we start having our minutes of the meeting revealed in the press next day in the morning. So we didn't have to write our minutes. He was just leaking everything to the press to make public pressure on the works of what was going on. Actually even complained to the Minister of Health that the other members of the group were not treating him as he thought that he deserved. But that was other things. But then it creates some difficulty, tensions between the groups, right? It makes it difficult to have the policy advice on this. Then he resigns close to the end and makes a fuss saying that we're going to get it all wrong. But then you have this scrambling on policy advising, right? And you create this idea that, okay, you have a group of experts that's supposed to give an opinion, but then we have one of them saying that all the others are all wrong. Or they have hidden agendas, or they have whatever. And this, of course, confuses what should be technical work with what is political work. It didn't help that we have representatives of the ministries into the process, which actually was a curious thing as well. I don't know if you are used to work with civil servants that are directly linked to the chain of power, but basically they will argue with you every word that you want to write, because every word that you want to write will mess up with something. For example, you can't say budget deficit. You need to say the balance of the budget of the public administrations so that you don't exclude the central, the local, and the regional administrations. Who cares? It's budget deficit. Right? So you have all these sort of things. And you need to have the resilience to go through the process and actually agree on words that will make some sense to everyone on board, which may bring something different things. But it means that in this process, we actually created a quite unhealthy context for discussion. We wanted to do a technical report. It became a political issue. We wanted to discuss openly report. It was in the office of the Prime Minister. And it was not released. What was the next step of this? Can you guess? What is usually the next step of these processes?
A new commission. Another commission.
Nothing of that. Nothing of that. Someone leaks a report to the press. Someone from the government, I don't know if even today, I don't even know today, whether it was from the Prime Minister's office, whether it was the Minister of Health office, it was a secretary that was bribed, I don't know. But suddenly there is this news that one TV channel starts announcing, we have the secret report, we're going to start to release it. And they did, chapter by chapter, okay? And then they start to release it in the blog of the newspaper. So this is in Portuguese, sorry, they didn't have a translation. This was a journalist, this was the TV, and he publishes in his own blog pages, starts publishing the pages of the report. And they were right. Curiously enough, it was not the last version of the report, because we changed a few sentences, so we could check that was not the last page. And then they published this with a cartoon of the Minister of Health like the undertaker of the NHS, which just puts more pressure on this. So leaking to the press is usually the next step of this, which puts the people that are there on a technical role, like I was and the other people were, in a difficult role. Should we step into this political discussion? Should we just be out of it and just say people say what they want? So that was a very curious thing. Then after 4 chapters that have been issued on TV, the government finally decided to release a report saying we are not going to apply none of this. Okay? So that was basically the end part of the other part. And then we have this, so this was the pages of the report. There's more blogs commenting on the issues and so on. Now, then we come the good again, in a sense. Okay? Not all these things are bad. We had financial rescue of Portugal. Probably have heard about it, 2011. Troika comes in, European Central Bank, European Commission, IMF, financial rescue of Portuguese finances. Huge part devoted to public health care. More than 50 measures to be adopted by the Ministry of Health. And curiously enough, from these 50 measures, more than 50 measures, all but one of the ones that we put in the report in 2007 were there. Well, either they read the report or the political Portuguese officials in the Ministry of Health released the same recommendations, or maybe they were sensible and they didn't have a commission to have that, but they appeared again. Okay? And so this was the kind of impact that we are having 7 years later, or actually this was 4 years later than we expected to show up. But it means that building the bridge is not as easy as it means. It means that as a professor at university, I don't want to take the pain of dealing with newspapers on these issues and answering these sort of things. But if you want to bridge the gap between the two sides, actually, you need to do some of this dirty work of bridging this gap. It's part of the scene. Okay? Then in the period 2011-2014, they implemented some of the things, not all, but it seems to be some impact at the end. So there was also a Portuguese regulatory health authority that actually taken up in a report 2011 many of the issues and updated the data on that. Okay? So what we need to have then, current influence. How can we make the bridge, can cross the bridge to the other side? Well, one first thing that I learned, you need to be technically sound. It doesn't matter that you want to convey your point or your opinion. Everyone that tries to cross this bridge is going to be fired. If he wants to intervene in policy making, he's going to be fired for those that make the opposition. No question about that. And the only way to survive the game is that you are truly independent on what you say and you aim on the long run. In the end, it pays off to have this independence. So I think that independence pays in the long 5 minutes. Okay. The second thing is if you really want to go for policy advising or to have some influence, then you can think about other means of having this influence. Try to have your opinion out of direct policy circles, but in a way that will influence that. I found that way that I can do that with the blog writing. Seems strange, right? Why should someone use a blog? Well, nowadays, the pressure for political decision is often with the media. Either you are able to cultivate a relationship with media partners, which most of us don't, and I don't for sure, or you have to find ways which makes easy for media to look for what you're doing. Editing research papers or publishing research papers is great. Publishing in academic journals is great, but we'll never get a journalist reading it. We'll never get a policy advisor reading it. Never get someone from a government commission reading it. Period. Now I found that blog writing actually helps a bit, and some simple things. And in my case, I start writing about the debt of public hospitals. Public hospitals in Portugal have debt. They have hidden debt. They create debt. And I start just following up what was released by the Minister of Finance on this debt. They monthly issue what is the amount. I just take the number every month. I just run a simple regression and I put the pictures up there. And I put in the first times, I put what will be my advice to solve this thing. After a couple of months of doing this, I start receiving first a call from IMF, from the mission of IMF in Portugal, saying, we want to discuss with you. What is your views on this? And that's one way of doing policy advising while being independent on the process. And I got a follow-up by the Ministry of Health. They start, when they publish the data, and they know, sometimes they have sent me advanced data on the issue, and sometimes they tell me, okay, we are doing this already, so perhaps you want to have that in consideration. And it's kind of a sort of policy advising on the background. And about the sale, there was also now a current issue in Portugal, a sale of an economic group, belonged to a financial group that just went bankrupt, and they put possible companies that want, possible groups that may want to buy it. Some of them are already operating in Portugal. And for the ones that are operating in Portugal, I just wrote a quick note saying, look, for these guys, we have a competition policy problem. We're not going to concentrate all the power in just a single economic group. That was sufficient to get calls first from one of the group, from the head of one of the groups, wanting to know more of what I have said. I have a call from newspaper wanting clarifications, and I got the government issuing a position saying they are worried about competition. Not only because of what I wrote, but certainly it made some influence there. So when you talk about bridging the gap between policy making and economic research, you can actually have different ways of doing it. One is with research academic papers and having to face the issue, how do you transmit to the other side, or try to see which bridge the other side wants to cross and try to find that other bridge and use it, not as much as a research paper, but using the way we are trained as health economists to explain things and then put it forward in a way that these people can take it. Okay? Of course, my objective will be to get rich out of it. Still not yet there, but hopefully one day. Okay, so this is the kind of things, oh, you can see here, sorry. But these are the kind of things I put there. This is the trend of the debt. This is confidence intervals. This was the regressions. So it's not, I'm not putting there a research paper, but I'm not just putting my opinion. I'm putting things with data. That's what brings the thing. So what will be the advice on this, on academics doing policy advising? The good. In the long run, your work may be useful. Be patient. That's the first advice. Second advice, the bad. It takes a long time. Giving credit is not really a strong point of policymakers. So don't wait for recognition. May appear, may not appear, but may have some impact in the long run. And the ugly part is politics, envy, and vested interest enter the picture. You need to know how to deal with it. And especially don't expect that decision makers will follow immediately what you say. It will never happen. But you may have an influence after some time that you get to that. So if you want to, in a more pictorial way, the lessons I take, first, the good part, keep calm and carry on, okay? If you get the bad, keep calm and keep going, okay? If you get the ugly, just call Batman, okay? That's my message here. Thank you.